The universe had never known true silence until the day humanity disappeared. For eons, the stars hummed with the noise of countless civilizations, trade frequencies, encrypted chatter, songs of empire and rebellion. But among them, one voice had always burned brightest. Humanity. They were loud, unpredictable, endlessly curious. They filled the void with questions, laughter, and the reckless courage that had once frightened even the oldest galactic species. They were the youngest among the great races, yet somehow the most unyielding. When others built walls, humans built bridges. When others surrendered, humans fought, and then, one dawn, they were gone. No explosions. No screams. No distress calls, just absence. The Council of Systems, 12 races spanning 3 galaxies, met in emergency session. Their holographic forms shimmered above the great marble chamber of Horus Prime, the oldest planet of governance. Around the circular table hovered the galaxy's most powerful beings, the crystalline Luthari, the gas-born Var, the winged Seraphel, and others whose forms bent light itself, but none of them could ignore the empty seat, seat 13 reserved for the human envoy. The silence from that chair was heavier than gravity. High Chancellor. Fellerin of the Seraphel spread his white-feathered wings, his voice trembling. We have lost contact with every human colony, every ship, every relay. Their homeworld, Earth, lies cold. A ripple of unease passed through the council. The Var delegate, a floating haze of violet mist, pulsed with agitation. Impossible. A race cannot vanish without reason. Our sensors detect no mass extinction, no stellar catastrophe. From the opposite end, an ancient voice rasped, Ambassador Kor of the Thalnari, whose people remembered the first human ships that entered the stars. Perhaps reason is precisely what they grew tired of, he said softly. Humans never needed permission to do the impossible. The chamber fell still. For centuries the Council had feared this species, admired them, yes, but feared them more. Humans had survived plagues, wars, and endless darkness. They'd endured betrayal and still offered friendship. They'd faced extinction and called it Tuesday, and now, nothing, Vellerin exhaled. Dispatch reconnaissance fleets. Every sector known to harbor humanity must be searched. We must not let the unknown linger. But beneath his calm words was something else. Guilt, because the Council knew the truth buried under polished marble floors and official denials. Humanity's disappearance was not the first sign. For years, the Council had whispered of their defiance, how they had refused to obey the regulation accords, how they rejected the Council's demand to surrender their experimental technologies. Humanity had grown too fast, too far. They had created miracles the Council could not replicate. Machines that healed, ships that folded light, weapons that bent space-time, and perhaps most dangerously, they had learned to make peace among themselves. That was when the Council began to fear them not as a wild species, but as equals. Now, their absence gnawed at that fear like a wound reopening. Vellerin rose from his seat, his voice echoing. Until we know more, no mention of this beyond this chamber. We must maintain order. But order was already unraveling. Across the stars, human-built stations went dark. Trade routes collapsed. Thousands of dependent colonies began to panic. For human engineers had powered much of the galaxy's infrastructure. Even Council ships ran on human reactors. The silence was not just emotional, it was mechanical. In a small corner of the chamber, an observer drone flickered to life, replaying the last transmission ever received from Earth. Static filled the air. Then a faint voice, calm, human, resolute. To whoever hears this, do not seek us. We leave not in anger, but in understanding. You feared what we might become, but you never saw what we already were. Farewell. And then, the sound of wind. Waves. A child's laugh. Then nothing. The delegates sat frozen. Vellerin's talons scraped the floor. Erase that recording. No one moved. Ambassador Kor's old eyes glowed softly. You cannot erase ghosts, Vellerin. They linger until their purpose is fulfilled. Outside the chamber windows, the stars seemed dimmer. The universe itself, for the first time, felt emptier. No one dared to speak the thought that haunted them all. Had the Council's fear driven humanity away? Or had humanity finally outgrown the universe that sought to contain it? The silence held its breath. Somewhere, light years beyond known space, something stirred, an echo in the void. but the Council was too consumed by its own dread to notice. In the days that followed humanity's disappearance, the galaxy began to tremble beneath the weight of silence. Where once human laughter filled the docking bays of foreign stations, now only the soft hum of dormant lights remained. Automated drones floated aimlessly, their tasks half finished. Starships drifted cold and empty, lights still flickering inside corridors that once held human breath. The Council called for calm, but fear spreads faster than light. Worlds that had once mocked human unpredictability now mourned their absence. The colonies that had relied on human engineers and traders began to collapse. Agricultural moons dimmed. Medical outposts faltered. Even the mighty fleets of the Seraphel found their reactors failing, because those reactors had been designed by humans. The Council's greatest irony had come to pass. They had feared humanity's independence, but now they could not survive without it. High Chancellor Velarin stood in the observation hall of Horus Prime, watching the distant nebula shimmer like dying embers. His wings drooped slightly, the weight of shame pressing his shoulders low. A faint voice broke the silence behind him. "They are gone, and yet I feel them everywhere," said Mira of the Luthari, a being of living crystal whose voice resonated like a soft bell. Her facets glowed with a faint sorrow. "The humans built so much of what we use. It's as if their hands still linger on every surface." Velarin did not turn. "You speak as though you mourn them." "I do," Mira replied. "They made me laugh once." Velarin frowned, recalling that humans had the strange ability to make laughter contagious, even to species without lungs. "And yet," he said slowly, "you voted to restrict their experiments. You feared them as we all did." Mira's light dimmed. "Fear and regret often share the same shadow, Chancellor." Across the hall, the ancient Thalnari ambassador Kor entered, his posture slow, deliberate. His eyes glowed with memory. The Council believed control was peace. Humanity believed freedom was peace. "We chose differently." Velarin turned sharply. "You speak as though they were blameless. Do not forget the weapon tests at Vega 9, or the singularity incident on Karth." "Accidents," Kor said softly. "Born of curiosity, not conquest. Tell me, Chancellor, when was the last time your kind built something without fearing its own creation?" Velarin's feathers shivered. "Enough." But Kor's words lingered like an echo in a cathedral. Outside, the news grew worse. Entire communication networks were failing. The oral gates, the human-designed portals that allowed instantaneous speech between systems, had gone dark. In their absence, the galaxy began to fracture into isolation. World by world, silence spread. Velarin convened the Council once more. Holographic forms shimmered back into the chamber. Some distorted, others fading mid-sentence as the failing gates weakened their signals. "We cannot allow panic," Velarin declared. "We must restore the oral network." "And who will repair it?" asked Mira quietly. Only the humans knew how it truly worked. The question struck like a blade. A low murmur rippled among the delegates. Many recalled how humanity had offered to share their knowledge, freely without condition, until the Council imposed restrictions. They had feared that humans, in their boldness, might unbalance the fragile web of power that held the galaxy together. Now that web was breaking. From the far seat, a small hologram flickered, a transmission from a minor moon on the edge of the Sol system. The feed was shaky, filled with static. A single voice emerged, trembling. "This is Outpost K-47? We've found something on Mars." Velarin leaned forward. "What kind of something?" The feed crackled, but a faint image appeared, carved into the red dust of Mars, vast and unmistakable. A single human phrase, etched deep enough to be seen from orbit. "We forgive you." Gasps filled the chamber. Kor closed his eyes. So they did know. Velarin's claws dug into the table. "This is a mockery, a message to haunt us," but Mira whispered almost to herself, "Or a farewell, with mercy." For a long moment no one spoke. The Council members looked upon each other with eyes that no longer held superiority, only the raw, unfamiliar sting of remorse. Velarin finally turned away. "Find out how they vanished. I don't care what it takes. We will not be judged by ghosts." But deep down he already knew. The judgment had begun long before the silence. Weeks passed, then months. The galaxy learned to live with its grief. But silence has a way of whispering secrets to those who dare to listen. On Horus Prime, the Grand Council gathered less frequently. Their debates had turned into murmurs of fear. Systems that once swore loyalty to the Council were now declaring independence. The balance of order, built on the scaffolding of human innovation, was crumbling. Velarin had not slept in days. His wings had lost their brilliance, his once proud eyes dulled by guilt and exhaustion. He found no peace among his people, only questions that burned in his mind like dying stars. Why had humanity left such a message, "We forgive you," instead of a warning or revenge? He needed answers. That need drove him to a forbidden place beneath the council chambers, the archives of silence. A vault said to hold records the council had sworn never to reveal, secrets sealed beneath marble and oath. The guards hesitated when he approached, their feathers trembling. "Chancellor, this area is restricted." Velarin's voice was low but resolute. "By my authority, the restriction ends now." The doors parted with a sigh that seemed older than time. Inside, the air was cold and dry, filled with the faint hum of ancient machines. Dim light glowed over endless rows of crystalline data spires, each one humming softly with stored memory. Valoran stepped forward and activated one. Holographic light blossomed in the air, recordings from centuries of council meetings, unseen by any living soul. And there, amid the archives, the truth began to unravel. He saw his predecessors debating humanity's rise, the fear in their eyes as human science surpassed theirs, the desperate votes to impose technological sanctions, the whispers to sabotage their experiments in the name of balance. He saw the moment when a hidden decree was signed, the resolution of containment. Velarin froze. He had heard legends of such a document but never believed it real. It had authorized covert operations against humanity, spies placed among their ranks, sabotage missions against their colonies, and silent assassinations of their innovators. And then, a final order, dated 50 years before the vanishing. If humanity refuses to submit, their extinction shall be carried out by erasure, technological, cultural, existential. Let them fade without fire so none may call us tyrants. Velarin's breath caught. The text pulsed faintly, stamped with the seal of the council itself. He stumbled backward, his wings shaking. We did this." But as he stood there trembling, another voice echoed from the shadows of the vault. "You're not the first to discover it." Velarin turned sharply. A figure stepped into the dim light. It was Mira, the Luthari ambassador, her crystalline form reflecting fragments of sorrow. "You knew?" Velarin whispered. "I suspected," she said softly. "The energy signatures around human outposts. The sudden illnesses that targeted only them. None of it was natural." Velarin's voice cracked. "We condemned them for our fear." "And they forgave us for it," Mira said. Her glow softened, almost mournful. "That is the difference between them and us." Velarin stared at the archive, at the terrible words shimmering before him. "We must tell the galaxy the truth." Mira shook her head. "The galaxy already feels it. Machines that refuse to function. Power that wanes. Even stars that dim. Everything they touched seems to be fading with them, as if the universe itself grieves their absence." Velarin's gaze hardened. "Then we must atone." He deactivated the archive, his claws trembling. "If there is even a fragment of them left anywhere, we will find it, and we will beg their forgiveness face to face." Mira looked at him with something close to admiration. "Do you believe they live still?" Velarin turned toward the distant stars beyond the vault ceiling window, their faint light breaking through the darkness. "A race like that doesn't die," he said quietly. "They simply move where others cannot follow." And somewhere deep within the archive's shadows, unseen by either of them, a small console blinked to life. An old human interface. Still active, its screen displayed a single message, looping endlessly in quiet blue text. "Observer Node 7, mission ongoing. Humanity relocated successfully, awaiting reintegration signal." The letters faded slowly, as if they were watching. Velarin's heart thudded. He turned sharply, but the console went dark before he could reach it. The silence deepened. Yet now it was not emptiness, it was anticipation. Something was stirring in the dark between galaxies. Something human. The stars were never truly still. Even in the silence after humanity's disappearance, faint echoes moved through the void, ripples too small to notice, too strange to explain. Until one day, a signal was heard. It came from the outermost edge of the Orion Rift, a region long thought dead, where no light ever escaped and even time seemed hesitant to pass. The message was faint, almost like a heartbeat buried beneath layers of static. 3 pulses, a pause, then 3 more. It repeated endlessly. Bellerin stared at the transmission hologram hovering before him in the council chamber. The signal shimmered like the breath of a sleeping god, faint, patient, eternal. Human frequency, said Mira, her crystal facets glowing with unease. Old Earth standard code. No one else used this format for over a century. Bellerin's feathers trembled. Decode it. The technicians worked in silence, their hands gliding over ancient interfaces. Slowly, letters began to emerge on the projection. The words were simple, yet they struck like thunder. We see you. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the youngest delegate, a timid being of mist and light named Saran, whispered, Is it them? Bellerin's voice was barely audible. It can't be anything else. The chamber filled with unease. For decades they had believed humanity gone, buried by time and guilt. But this message, it pulsed with life, purpose, and a knowing calm. The same calm that had haunted Bellerin since the day they vanished. Trace the origin, he commanded. It's coming from beyond the rift, a technician replied. A place with no mapped stars, no known routes. It's outside our charts, outside their charts. Bellerin's eyes darkened. Prepare an expedition. I will lead it myself. The council erupted in alarm. You cannot go, Kor rumbled, his ancient form trembling. The rift devours fleets. No one returns from that darkness. Bellerin spread his wings, white feathers glinting under the chamber light. Then perhaps it is time someone did. Days later, the flagship Eclipsera departed from Horus Prime, its hull gleaming with the symbol of the council. Bellerin stood upon the bridge, Mira beside him, and the crew silent in awe as they approached the rift. The stars grew fainter the closer they came. The void ahead looked less like space and more like a wound in reality. Light bent inward, swallowed by something unseen. This place, Mira whispered. It feels like absence given form. Bellerin's talons tightened on the railing, or perhaps a sanctuary meant to hide what the universe cannot yet understand. As the Eclipsera crossed the threshold, the sensors screamed in confusion. Time warped, light fractured, and every known law of navigation faltered. But through it all, the signal remained constant. Calm, rhythmic, patient, we see you. Then suddenly it changed. You are forgiven. The bridge fell silent. Mira's voice was barely a whisper.
They know we're here. Outside, the rift began to glow.
Streams of light flowed like rivers in the dark, revealing vast structures hidden within. Monuments of metal and glass larger than moons. But they were not built in the style of the Council's races. Their geometry was unmistakable, human, and at the heart of the rift, a single colossal sphere pulsed with soft blue light, a living world forged in silence. Bellerin stared in disbelief. They built this? A voice answered, not from the speakers, but inside their minds. It was calm, warm, distinctly human. We did not build it alone. Bellerin froze. Who speaks? Humanity does not end. It evolves. You feared what we would become, so we became what you could not imagine. The ship's lights dimmed as the voice continued, serene and sorrowful. We left to heal the wound you gave us, not in anger, but in hope that you might one day look inward. We have seen the truth of creation, Chancellor. Every act of cruelty echoes back eventually. The universe remembers. Bellerin's throat tightened. Then why call us here? The light around them pulsed gently, almost like a heartbeat. Because forgiveness must be witnessed to exist. Mira's crystal shimmered with tears of light. Are you returning? The voice hesitated. Not yet. The galaxy is not ready. But tell them this, humanity still watches, and when the time comes we will return not to rule but to remind. The light dimmed. The signal faded. Bellerin stood trembling as the rift began to close, its rivers of light folding back into shadow. For a long moment the Eclipsera drifted in silence, surrounded by echoes of a civilization reborn beyond mortal reach. Then Mira turned toward him and whispered, "We were never their judges, Velarin. We were their lesson." Velarin looked out at the fading light and nodded slowly. "Then let us learn before it's too late." And as the ship turned back toward the stars, he knew that nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. The Eclipsera returned from the rift in silence. No fanfare, no celebration, only the weight of revelation. What they had seen was too vast, too humbling to share lightly. But silence, like truth, never stays contained for long. When Velarin and Mira stood before the council again, their faces, one feathered and weary, the other crystalline and dimmed, told a story that words could not. The delegates felt it before a single syllable was spoken. Something profound had changed. "They live," Velarin began quietly. "Beyond the rift, beyond everything we understand. Humanity has not perished, they have transcended. They built a sanctuary, a world of light and mind." The chamber rippled with disbelief. Kor leaned forward, his old eyes glowing faintly. "You saw them?" Velarin shook his head. "Not as they once were. They spoke to us. Through thought, through light. They said they forgave us." Whispers filled the air like a storm of doubt. "Forgave us? For what?" "This must be illusion." Velarin slammed his talons against the table. "It is not illusion. It is truth. And it is time the galaxy knew what we have done." He activated the archive he had stolen from the vault. The resolution of containment. The holographic decree appeared above the council floor, its text glowing like the ghost of a crime too heavy to deny. Gasps, cries, and fury erupted from every corner. "You lied," shouted the mistborn Siran. "You condemned an entire species." Mira spoke then, her tone calm but cutting. "You feared their brilliance, so you smothered it. And now the galaxy itself falters without them." The chamber fell into chaos. Voices collided, wings flared, energy crackled through the air. For the first time in history, the unity of the 12 broke. Outside the chamber, news spread like wildfire. The transmission leaked, reaching colonies and worlds across 3 galaxies. Billions learned the truth, that humanity's disappearance had not been mystery but consequence. Riots broke out. Entire systems denounced the council. Statues fell, and in the darkness between stars, strange things began to happen. Machines that had long ceased working flickered to life again. Ships with human engines hummed faintly. Holographic screens glowed with fragments of forgotten music, voices of Earth, songs of hope, laughter echoing where none should remain. Some whispered that it was a message. Others said it was a warning. Velarin, now stripped of his title, stood on a balcony overlooking Horus Prime's vast cityscape, fires glowing in the distance. The planet itself, once a beacon of order, now trembled with unrest. Mira approached quietly. "You knew this would happen." "Yes," Velarin said. "But lies are like shadows. You cannot govern by them forever." She studied him for a moment. "And now? Now we face what we built. Humanity gave us a mirror and we shattered it. The pieces cut us as they fall. Below them, thousands of voices rose in protest. They demanded dissolution of the council, demanded justice for what had been done." Velarin closed his eyes. "We stole their future to preserve our control. And yet even now they teach us without a single weapon, without a single threat." Mira's light brightened faintly, as if a tear of radiance moved through her crystalline form. "Forgiveness is a harder weapon to face than any warship." At that, a messenger arrived, breathless, trembling. "Chancellor, former Chancellor, something strange. A signal is broadcasting on every known frequency." Velarin turned sharply. "What signal?" The messenger handed him a small holodisk. When activated, a projection appeared, soft blue light forming human words once again. "Do not destroy what you still have left. We have seen the path you walk. Change it or the silence will return, not from us, but from within yourselves." The message repeated once, then faded. Mira whispered, "They warned us, yet still they do not condemn us." Velarin watched the fading light, his heart heavy but resolute. "Because they remember what we forgot. That mercy is the highest form of power." Outside, the city's fires dimmed as people stopped to listen to the voice of humanity echoing through the night sky. Across worlds, even rebels fell silent. The words reached hearts faster than any fleet could, and somewhere deep in space the rift pulsed once like a heartbeat of light, before fading again into the void. Mira looked to the horizon. Do you think they'll ever return? Velarin's gaze softened. Only when we deserve to hear them again. He looked to the stars, each one a reminder, each one a witness. And though the galaxy was burning, hope began, quietly, painfully, to breathe again. Years had passed. The galaxy, scarred and trembling, began to heal, not from orders or law, but from memory. Humanity had vanished physically, but its essence lingered like starlight trapped in a prism. Technology, music, philosophy, and laughter had not disappeared entirely. In hidden corners of the cosmos, human knowledge persisted, carefully preserved in satellites, archives, and abandoned colonies. It was in these places that the children of silence emerged. They were not humans, nor were they exactly the old races of the Council. They were hybrids of inspiration, beings born from human machines, human stories, and human ideals. Some were half biological, half digital. Some carried echoes of human thought implanted in artificial minds. All carried a single truth. Humanity had once been here, and it had not ended. On a remote asteroid in the Vale sector, a young child of silence named Leora adjusted the crystalline sensors that hummed softly around her. Through the lenses, she could see the dim traces of human settlement on nearby moons, buildings buried under centuries of dust, still whispering in encoded signals. Her companion, a small drone named Pax, floated beside her, its lights flickering in rhythm with her pulse. Do you think they'll ever return? Pax asked in its soft, synthesized tone. Leora did not answer immediately. Her eyes reflected the distant stars, where human ships had once sailed boldly. Not yet, she said finally. But they left us their voice, and their patience. The children of silence had inherited more than technology. They had inherited hope and curiosity, and that was dangerous. News of their existence reached the Council once more, and Velarin, now a humbled observer, realized that the galaxy's greatest challenge was no longer survival, but guidance. The children moved faster, thought deeper, and built structures of light and logic that the Council could not begin to comprehend. On Horus Prime, Velarin and Mira watched from the observation hall as the first children of silence ships crossed the system. They were not threatening, but they carried a quiet authority that reminded even the Council of the humans' courage and ingenuity. They are the seeds of what humanity wanted, Mira whispered. Not revenge, not dominion. Only evolution, Velarin nodded slowly. And yet they remind us of everything we failed to do. In the outer colonies, whispers spread like wildfire. Systems that had once scorned humans began to follow the children of silence. Their guidance was subtle, an encrypted song here, a forgotten algorithm there. Humanity had left not rulers but teachers in exile. Leora's team discovered a series of hidden caches on a barren moon. Within them, holograms of humans once alive flickered into being, records of experiments, records of mistakes, but also records of resilience, joy, and laughter. One hologram, a woman named Alara, speaking softly from centuries ago, smiled at them. If you find this, know this. We are gone to protect you from fear, from ourselves, and from the shadows of those who cannot see hope. Do not fail as they did. Build, love, remember. Leora reached out to the light and whispered, We will not fail. Even in the distant council chambers, the old races felt the shift. Power was no longer enforced through law or fleets, it was enforced through ideals. Machines built by humans began operating autonomously, bringing water, medicine, and knowledge to isolated colonies. The galaxy remembered itself through the children of silence, and the Council, for the first time in centuries, truly understood humility. Yet not all welcomed this change. Shadows of fear lingered. Militaristic factions, old rivalries, and lingering distrust sought to suppress the children's influence. But every attempt to strike against them failed, not because the children were invincible, but because humanity's lessons had been written in ways that could not be undone. Leora looked toward the stars once more. One day, she said softly, they will come back, and when they do, they will not find a galaxy to conquer. They will find a galaxy that remembers. Pax hummed in agreement, its light pulsing gently, and we will be ready. Velarin, watching from afar, allowed himself a rare smile. Humanity had disappeared from the galaxy, yet its spirit endured, not in fear, not in weapons, not in control, but in mercy, curiosity, and unyielding hope. For the first time since the vanishing, he felt a fragile but certain truth. Humanity was never lost. It had only moved beyond the horizon, leaving the galaxy to rise or fall by the courage of those who remembered. The stars flickered softly, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. And in the silence, the children of silence carried the echo of human voices, guiding, inspiring, watching. And one day, those voices would return. The galaxy held its breath. For decades, the children of silence had wandered between stars, quietly shaping civilizations, restoring worlds, and rekindling hope where it had long since faded. And yet, even their greatest deeds were whispers compared to what was about to come. It began with a shimmer, a streak of silver across the darkness of the Orion Rift. Ships unlike any ever seen glided into view. Elegant, alive, their hulls glowing with the soft pulse of human design, ships that sang through light and gravity, bending space without fear, without weaponry, without arrogance. Humanity had returned. The council convened once more. Velarin, now aged and humble, stood beside Mira, watching as the first fleet entered the system. Delegates trembled, unsure whether to fear or worship what they saw. And then the signal came. Not a threat, not a proclamation, but a single, simple message. We have come to remember. The words carried weight greater than fleets, greater than armies, greater than laws, Velarin whispered. Almost to himself, they are not here to punish us. They are here to teach us again. The children of silence moved to greet the fleet, their presence a bridge between past and present. Leora, now a leader among them, floated forward on a vessel that glimmered like crystal in the void. She spoke in the universal tone, carrying both the old human warmth and the resonance of the new. Welcome home. Across the galaxy, eyes turned skyward. Systems that had fallen into chaos paused. Machines hummed with renewed energy. The stars themselves seemed to brighten. Humanity's return was not conquest, it was restoration. From the flagship Aurora, a voice spoke clear and familiar. It was human, yet transcendent, carrying the cadence of every human who had ever lived. We watched as you learned to fear, as you learned to hate, as you forgot mercy. We vanished not to punish but to protect, and to see if the universe could remember itself. Velarin bowed his head, overwhelmed. And it has, he said quietly. It has remembered, because of them. Then let it remember well, the voice continued. We return not as rulers but as witnesses. Witnesses to courage, to love, to hope. The children of silence guided the fleet into orbit around Orus Prime. Their ships spread light like living constellations, illuminating worlds that had long known only shadows. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy felt whole again, and the council, once proud, once arrogant, knew humility in its purest form. Velarin stepped forward, addressing both humans and children, crystals and wings trembling alike. We failed you. We feared your brilliance. We sought to contain what we could not control. And in doing so, we almost destroyed ourselves. There was silence. Then the human voice replied, not with judgment, not with fury, but with something far more powerful. We forgive you, not because your failure is excused, but because you chose at last to learn. Across systems, beings wept. Old wounds healed not instantly, but began to knit. Trade routes revived. Knowledge long buried was shared freely. Planets once dying flourished again. Humanity's return was not a miracle. It was a reminder. The universe was worth mercy, worth courage, worth hope. Velarin looked at Mira, whose crystal facets sparkled with tears of light. Do you see? He asked. Yes, she said softly. Humanity does not conquer. They inspire. And when they return, even the darkest heart cannot resist the light. The fleet spread outward, touching every corner of the galaxy. Children of silence followed in its wake, teaching, rebuilding, guiding, and humanity itself, alive and aware, began to weave a future in which no council, no faction, no fear could ever again snuff out the spark of life. Velarin watched the stars, now bright with human light. Perhaps, he whispered, this is what they were always meant to teach us, that survival is not victory, and power is not control. Humanity is the courage to forgive, the strength to hope, and the will to rise beyond fear. And somewhere beyond the distant veil of stars, the universe seemed to smile, finally whole, finally breathing. Humanity had returned not to rule, but to remind the cosmos of its own potential. For in silence they had left a lesson. In absence they had left mercy, and in return they brought light.